Hey, I'm Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California, here today to teach you Prasarita Padottanasana A, B, C, and D, otherwise known as Prasarita Padottanasana 1, 2, 3, and 4. Really, in English terms, it's like a wide leg forward bend. Now, wide leg forward bends are great, period. Don't get me wrong, they are great. Hard stop. However, for those of you who have trouble with forward bending with your legs straight with your feet together, just know the wider your legs go, the easier it gets to go down because it gives you more freedom in the pelvis. So this might be a nice alternative for people who want to get into their hamstrings and are sort of tighter in their hamstrings. So let's get started. Remember that Prasarita Padottanasana A, B, C, and D, otherwise known as 1, 2, 3, and 4, are derivatives of the Ashtanga Primary Series. Now, you want to start with your feet nice and wide and basically parallel, okay? So you don't want them like turned out excessively, and you definitely don't want them turned in excessively. So how do we define parallel? We define parallel by second and third toes facing forward because, like, as it turns out, our feet are sort of more triangular than they are rectangular, so they don't really go like parallel per se. So let's call them parallel-ish. How wide apart? Well, this would be basically if I take my arms out to the sides, your wrists should be more or less over your ankles. Remember, none of this is an exact science. It's just like the best you can with what you've got because proprioception is weird. Like I go like this, I'm not exactly sure if my wrists are over my ankles, but I can guess that they are. So that is about your starting point. What we're gonna learn is that that's just a starting point. And you may adjust in one way or another depending on your flexibility. So let's get into Prasarita Padottanasana A, otherwise known as 1. So first thing you want to do is take your arms up into the air. Why? Because arms up encourages you to lengthen, otherwise known as extend, the spine. Remember that every forward bend in yoga has an element of a back bend, with the exception of, if you pay attention, Uttanasana. That's actually a spinal flexion, but it is the exception to all the rules. The rule here is every forward bend has an element of a back bend. By taking my arms up and looking up, you could touch your palms if you want to, not as important on this one. What I'm doing is providing spinal extension. Now, because I'm gonna wind up with basically a tripod position in my arms, I'm gonna go forward with my arms forward, but if this is too intense, go forward with your arms sideways. This is always an option. However, maintain the extension, otherwise known as a back bend in your spine. Once you get low enough, your hands come on the floor about shoulders distance apart, middle fingers facing forward. Now, if this is very hard for you, put blocks under your hands. If this is very easy for you, we're gonna get into that. Okay, so middle fingers are facing forward, hands are about shoulders distance apart, spine is an extension, so don't round down. You should be looking like sort of forward. Your hands, maintaining middle fingers, or really all fingers facing forward, walk backwards to the extent that works for your body, as if coming into basically a tripod position. Now, if the heel of your palm starts to lift, you went too far. So you want to go as far back as works, okay? And then with the length in your spine, lift up from your sits bones, okay? So you're going to actively lengthen your hamstrings and fold it down, taking your head to the floor, okay? Now, something you might notice in this position that's very familiar is it is the upper body equivalent of the entry to a tripod headstand, right? Shirshasana B, otherwise known as Shirshasana 2. So this actually is a really nice entry point should you get here by just pressing into your head, spreading your legs out to bring them up and taking you into a headstand, which you could come out of the same way you came in. Now, there's a very, very important point that I want to make here, which is to say, how wide do the feet go? Now, you might say, oh, come on, Shana, I'm listening. You said if I'm standing up, the feet are as wide as the wrist, right? That's the answer. Well, remember I said that's the starting point. So let me talk about why it might only be a starting point. Let's say, like me, it's quite easy to get your head on the floor. Okay, you could just plop your head on the floor. So I'm not going to get a maximal stretch if I could just like hang out in this position. So the rule is, how far can I bring my feet together towards each other while still maintaining my head lightly on the floor? So like imagine like a piece of paper could not get under it, but if I went a little tiny bit more, it could. Okay, so I walk my hands back and take my head down, and then I'm going to just sort of toe heel a little bit and test this out. Can I still get my head to the floor? Now remember, it sits bones up as the head goes down. I'm looking for spinal extension. Still easy. I'm going to go a little bit more. Notice these are very small movements. I'm going to go a little bit more. Okay, so that's pretty much where I'm going to go because I don't want to go so far that it feels like I'm tipping forward. Now that I'm this high, my hands can actually move further back into the tripod position. So my head is very light on the floor. Shoulders are lifting. I know it's a little hard to tell when I'm in a t-shirt, but they are. And that's my Prasarita Padottanasana A. Now, let's say that you're tighter, okay? So if you're tighter, let's say you started out, I don't know, about this far, and you can't even get your hands to the floor, okay? Your hands are on blocks, then just try to relax your shoulders and just stretch there, okay? But let's say alternatively, I'll start really close to sort of draw this conclusion. Let's say that you're pretty close and you're like, oh, I know that I could touch if I just go a little bit wider. In that scenario, feel free to go a little bit wider. But the rule is you want your feet as narrow as possible to have your head on the floor. Okay, so here's my Prasarita Padottanasana A. And to come out, I just walk my hands forward, extend my spine, and again, arms could go forward or out to the sides, your choice. Maintain a flat back as you rise up, and voila. Okay, Prasarita Padottanasana B. Now, in a perfect world, all four of these, well, in an Ashtanga world, I don't know that that's a perfect world, but it is who created these four in succession. So in that world, you stay in the pose for 5 long breaths, okay? 5 long Ujjayi breaths. And you just go from one into the other. Now, be mindful if your knees start feeling like you're hyperextending, meaning it really pulls on your back knee. Very, very common, especially when your legs are straight for so long. So make sure you're maintaining a micro bend. What's a micro bend? A micro bend is small enough that you can feel it, but nobody else can see it. Okay, number 2. For me, number 2 is the hardest one. For me, it should be number 4. Number 4 should be number 2, but I'm not Patabi Joyce. So this one, start with your hands on your hips. And just like before, we start with spinal extension, okay? How do we extend? We lift our chest, like imagine like you're trying to get your chest to face the ceiling. Roll your shoulders back. Your gaze will be sort of up. You should feel like a back bend in your upper back. Why? Because it's a back bend in your upper back. Okay, so you inhale here, And then on an exhale, you maintain that back bend, okay? And try to take your head to the floor. Now, once you get down, same rules as before. My head went pretty easily. I'm going to go a little bit closer. Okay. I think this one is harder because you don't have hands on the floor. There's nothing to really catch you if you feel like you're going to flip over. Also, although it's weird in Prasarita Padottanasana A, when your hands are down in like the tripod position, they almost act like suction cups and sort of pull you down. Here you have nothing to help you. Okay, make sure your shoulders are in the back and down position, which when you're upside down really means back and up, right? Because I'm inverted. Even as what is going on with my hips, I'm lifting my hips to lengthen my hamstrings, okay? The weight is trying to evenly distribute between the inside and the outside of the foot in all of these stretches. Then on an inhale, I flatten my spine and rise up. Okay, number 3. Now, this one is sort of hellish for me because I'm having some major shoulder issues right now. So I'll go ahead on record. There are people who can do this with their hands going all the way over to the floor. I am not one of them. However, what I want you to think about in this pose is the fact that if you're feeling it, just like every stretch, you're doing it, okay? So you're gonna do what works for your body. On this one, I interlace my hands behind my back, okay? The hands should pull away from your body. They don't have to go far away from your body, but you don't want them resting on your tush if possible. Now, what's beautiful about this stretch? It automatically starts you into spinal extension. Okay, so I'm gonna exaggerate the spinal extension by lifting my chest, okay? And then I maintain the extension. My hands are off my back. And as my head comes down to the floor, now again, don't expect great things here. My arms go up and over. Now in a perfect world, if you can, take your palms together. I'm not even gonna work that today because again, I'm having some serious issues here. And again, if you can't get your head to the floor, but you're pretty close, go a little wider with your feet. And if you can get to the floor, take your feet closer together, okay? So find your edge. And here's what I recommend. I do this a little bit differently. After 5 breaths, switch every finger over one and stretch into the other shoulder for another 5 breaths. Okay, so there are absolutely people who could get their hands all the way to the floor here. I'm very far from that reality. When it's time to come up, I extend my spine and voila. Okay, we've arrived. Prasarita Padottanasana D, otherwise known as I hope you don't need these otherwise known as, but maybe you're not fluent in English or haven't learned your alphabet. Okay, Prasarita Padottanasana D. In ways, I think this is the easiest one, but if not, I definitely think it's the second easiest one. Maybe the first one is the easiest one. So, because our hands are going to be going all the way down, we start with the arms all the way up, okay? Because it's not hands on hip, it's not hands clasped. So just like A, start tall and what? Extend your spine, okay? Looking up helps. You can touch your palms if you want to. And then this time I'm going to go wide with my arms because I'm going to wind up wide with my arms. Yogic toe lock, right? You take your peace fingers, close them up, grab your big toes with your first 2 fingers, and inhale, lengthen your spine. As you exhale, pull yourself in. Again, too easy, toe heel your feet in any amount. Work incrementally because absolute edges are not always easy to find. And as my head goes down, my shoulders and my hips go up. How do you think you come out? First flatten. And on this one, you could take hands to your hips and rise up. Okay? In Ashtanga, they jump their feet together. For me, I actually prefer to do a little toe heel bit to get my feet back together and ready for whatever comes next. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Don't forget to check out my Venmo channels that are listed in the description, where I have full-length classes. So you can take the poses that you learn with me here on YouTube and apply them as well, so you can have the proper warm-ups to get the stretch, strength, and balance that you know you need for an amazing yoga practice. Hey, you know what they say. Namaste and have a great day.